Hi, I'm Ryan Malone, Music Director at Herbert W. Armstrong College and Imperial Academy, based here in Edmond, Oklahoma at the Philadelphia Church of God World Headquarters. Welcome back to the second lesson of these conducting tutorials. Again, these are based on a symposium we conducted back in 2004, and which was based on one I attended a few years prior to that. They condensed the years of conducting instruction that I received from my teacher, Dr. David Rail, into a single day, and I am repackaging that material into an even more concise format such as this. As I said last time, though the original principles were originally intended to help choral conductors, I am making this discussion a little broader, and these initial lessons certainly are broad enough for any conducting student. Last time we talked about the importance of a clear gesture in communicating to your ensemble and in aiding the efficiency of a rehearsal. We talked about making yourself visible with the music stand height and angle, how to use your space most effectively in terms of hand separation and your overall posture. And then we discussed the basics of starting and stopping the sound, and we used the downbeat as the example of where the sound was and how to prepare an ensemble to come in on the downbeat. But the sound doesn't always start on the downbeat. Commonly, the sound may start on an upbeat or even on other beats in the pattern. And I want to talk about how to handle those today. This requires us to know what a beat is in terms of manual conducting. To do that, we have to review what the ictus is. Remember, ictus means point, and this is the point where the hand changes direction. If my arm goes up to prep for a downbeat, it must not only come back to the same plane from where it started, it must also rebound or change direction at that plane. That change of direction confirms to the eye that yes, that was the plane. And that point where the hand rebounded or started to move in another direction is called the ictus. The beat in conducting is the space between the icti. This is important to remember. The ictus is the point that marks the beginning of the beat, and the beat is what happens from one change of direction to the next change of direction. How the beat looks should help the ensemble know what the music is doing. That space, the beat, is where the music is happening, and how we move through the beat should be conducive to good musical tone, as in either encouraging good bowing from string players or as in encouraging steady breath flow from singers or wind players. Sometimes the ictus can be more punctuated if the music calls for that, but just be aware of how this is telegraphed in how you conduct. Now, just so this is stated clearly for the record, here are what a few common beat patterns look like. Here's the beat pattern in 2. I'll put my left hand near the plane as a point of reference. And here's what it looks like in 3. And here's what it looks like in 4. You'll notice that the final ictus for each pattern, just before the upbeat, occurs very near the first ictus of each pattern, the downbeat. That is why all our prep beats in the last video went straight up, basically. In the case of a 4 pattern, we count to the 4th ictus and stop, and that tells us the beat or the motion that serves as the preparation if we're starting on a downbeat. 1, 2, 3. We don't show the 4th ictus for our prep, but only the 4th beat. So the prep beat is in fact the beat, not the ictus. And we can take this principle into how to start the sound on any beat. For all these examples today, I'm going to stay with a 4 beat per bar pattern, just to keep everything standard throughout this lesson. In America the Beautiful, the sound begins on beat 4, or the upbeat, as we might say in the colloquial. So we count to the 3rd ictus and stop. 1, 2, so we will show the 3rd beat, not the 3rd ictus. Oh, beautiful. okay? In the hymn, My Hope is in His Word, we have a pickup note that begins on beat 3 of 4. So we count to the second ictus and stop, and then show the second beat. 1, t. Lord, from the depths to thee I cry. This famous folk tune starts on beat 2 of a 4-beat pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. So to bring the ensemble in on beat 2, we count and stop at the first ictus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now, in some pieces, the sound starts between beats, or what we might call half beats. This is a little trickier, and I'll show you how to start an ensemble when the sound occurs between 2 beats or between 2 gestures. Before I do that, just a few more cautions about the beat. Again, as stated in our first lesson, when prepping, don't show any extra clicks during the prep. Show only motion. Showing an ictus or a click in addition to the beat could confuse a musician who is counting rests. So say it starts on beat 1, like we did last time, and we show them not just up, but we click as we go up. And so was that the beat, or was that the ictus and the beat? So it could get them to start at the wrong point, getting the musician to start counting at the wrong place. I would give the same caution throughout the entire beat pattern to be sure we don't do anything extra on the ictus or anything unnecessary through the beat which could distract from our clarity. Eliminate any extra finger or knuckle motion or any extra wrist or elbow motion. Also avoid any extra bouncing from the overall body, knee bouncing or head nodding. So at the very least, those things can distract from where the ictus is. Make the ictus and the beat as fat-free as possible. Keep the hand, wrist, and forearm together when they move through the beats. A common extraneous thing is clicking or hitting the ictus. Again, when conducting any beat pattern, we don't need to do anything extra on the ictus. We don't need to smack it or stab it. All we need to do is change direction. And as long as we are maintaining a constant speed through the beat, everything will be sufficiently clear to our ensembles where that change of direction is. One final caution about the beat pattern as relates to starting the sound. Your beat pattern should generally be relatively small. The biggest gestures you make will be those prep beats. But once the ensemble has started, your beat pattern can resume its smallness. This is also good to do because you're not just giving bigger prep beats when starting the sound, but also giving a slightly larger beat when the group moves off a long note. If the group is singing The Water is Wide, na, da, 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 which has a lot of long sustained pitches, I can telegraph when they are to move off those notes by making the gesture slightly bigger on the beat before they move off that long note. This reinforces the main idea from these tutorials that conducting is a series of preparations. Just as the sound doesn't always start on the downbeat, not all sound ends on a downbeat. Say the ensemble needs to release on beat 3 of a 4-beat per bar pattern, and I'm saying release instead of cutoff, for which I offer an explanation in lesson 1. I still believe that the set, prep, and rebound for these releases are the same as far as our left hands are concerned. The up-down motion of the left hand is the clearest way to get an ensemble to stop making sound. So in the case of releasing on beat 3, your left hand still gives an up-down motion on what would be between beats 2 and 3. Since all releases on any main beat are based on the up-down motion of the left hand, I won't need to dwell any further on this. Just realize that the left hand going up and down while the right hand goes in and out, or some other combination of motions, will require a bit of practice at first. Now, back to starting the sound. Not only does sound not always begin on a downbeat, sometimes it doesn't begin on one of the main beats at all, neither on 1, 2, 3, or 4, but perhaps on the last half beat of one of those numbers. So what do we do when the sound begins between two beats? You commonly see music where the quarter note gets the beat, and yet not all music tidally starts on one of those quarter notes. Sometimes it starts the 8th note before. For example, say you are starting your ensemble on the section from the chorus, "Lift Up Your Heads" in Handel's Messiah, where everyone sings, "Who is this King of Glory?" The word "who" doesn't start on beat 4, but on the last half of beat 4. How do we handle this? Well, the principle of showing them one full beat still applies. In this case, we say show at least one full beat. So in practice, we are actually showing them a beat and a half. So 1, 2, who is. If the material starts on the last half of 4, I have to show all of beat 3 and then start beat 4. Here's how we do that. If we make too big of a deal about beat 3 and we breathe on beat 3, they will want to start on beat 4 instead of on the last half of 4. Who is? It's very confusing. So we show them beat 3, but we make it smaller and we don't breathe. What the beat 3 does is establish the tempo. See, only showing them half a beat doesn't give them enough time to process what your tempo is. So we show a small, non-breathing beat 3 in this case, and then we show a large beat 4 and breathe there. Who is this King of Glory? So, what about something that starts on the last half of beat 3, which is more common than you might originally think? A hymn we commonly sing in the Philadelphia Church of God is called "Unless the Lord Shall Build the House." And 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Song leaders struggle with this because the pianist in the congregation, bringing them in on the half of beat 3, or the latter half of beat 3, is a little tricky. If I beat the whole bar, and you as a trained musician and conductor know which beat to sing on, you would have no trouble. 1, 2, 3. Unless the Lord shall build the house. But that's not the clearest way to handle it. So to start on the last half of beat 3, we go back to beat 2, 1, and then we show beat 2 small, and then we show beat 3 big, and we breathe there. Unless the Lord shall, so 1, unless the Lord shall, or as a song leader, if I use 2 hands, unless the Lord shall. You would use the same principle to start something on the second half of beat 2, show them a small beat 1, and then a big beginning of beat 2 while breathing. Say you're cueing the sopranos without an accompaniment for their fugue statement in Handel's "And He Shall Purify." And He shall purify. Likewise, the same principle would work for something that started on the second half of beat 1. Show them a small upbeat and breathe on the downbeat so they can come in on the second half of the downbeat, like in the opening of Beethoven's Fifth, which I know is in 2/4, not 4/4 time. Ba 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 ba. One of the trickiest things is getting the ensemble to stop the sound on one of these half beats. I'll go ahead and discuss it here, even though it's a little more advanced of an idea. So let's say your ensemble needs to stop making sound on the second half of beat 3 before coming back in on 4. There's no gesture for the second half of beat 3, nor can you go up, down, starting at the second half of beat 2. That's not only incredibly difficult for you, it would be equally impossible for them to decipher. The best way to do this is still to set the left hand before the release, but to divide your right hand beat pattern when you get to beat 3 into 2 distinct motions. Watch my right hand. What I do with my left hand is I set it during that sustained pitch. 1, 2, 3. And then I mirror the right hand's check mark-like motion that you just saw me do. I also breathe in that check mark. 1, 2, 3, 4. The same would apply if you had to release on the last half of beat 4 or the upbeat. Notice how I divide the beat into 2 clearly marked halves and how my left hand mirrors this after being set prior to that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. It's basically stopping at the ictus and then showing the beat while breathing, which makes for a clear division between the 2 beats in the bar, or the 2 halves of the beat, I should say. Any of these usually require a bit of rehearsing with your group, teaching the ensemble what you mean by that check mark-like motion. After a while, they get trained to know what you mean, not to mention what the score means when it calls for this, and it can be a huge time saver in rehearsals. Starting the sound and stopping the sound are the most basic of conducting principles, but oftentimes we will also have to cue things to start after the music is already going. Say you've started the pianist and will continue beating time until the chorus enters. Or you've started the ensemble at the beginning, but another instrument or section comes in later. How is this done? Well, the principles required to start and stop the sound are still the same. Set, prepare, and rebound at the playing. The difference is that our right hand will continue to beat time throughout the cue, and generally our left hand will be the cue hand. For example, in the Hallelujah from Handel's Messiah, both the instrumental accompaniment and the chorus enter on a downbeat, but the instruments start on the downbeat of bar 1 and the chorus on the downbeat of bar 5. So I start the sound with the instruments as I normally would, and just before the choir comes in, my left hand gets still or set, and then I show a big beat 4 in my left hand while breathing right before the chorus comes in. So, the introduction. So let's say I bring the pianist in with just my right hand, or the ensemble. Bum, 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 bum. And then I keep beating time throughout that introduction. And then I get my left hand ready right before the chorus comes in. Hallelujah. So you see how that works. Sometimes there are multiple cues in a row, say in a fugal section of a work, and I'll stick with the Handel chorus example. In the middle, the basses start the fugue, and he shall reign forever and ever. And then I have to cue the tenors, and then the altos, and then the sopranos. In these cases, I set my left hand a few beats before each entrance, and I will even angle my body toward the section, depending on how spread out the ensemble is. That's part of the set. Another part of the set is making my right hand's beat pattern a little smaller. If it's too big, then that can distract from my cue hand when it's time to come in. And getting set in these ways, then I can make one beat prior to their singing the largest gesture while I breathe on that prep. After that, I continue to maintain eye contact with that section when I rebound on the playing, a nonverbal way of saying, yes, you came in at the right place. I shouldn't need to give an example of many more cues like that or show what they look like starting on different beats. The main point is find the beat they enter on, know that you will have to show the previous beat very demonstratively in your left hand while breathing, and then make everything else around it smaller. There are various ways to mark these things in your score to help you know, say, to make beat 3 bigger for a beat 4 entrance. As long as you know what beat it is that you are prepping them on, you should be clear enough for them to enter. And then always be sure to maintain eye contact just after they enter. This follow-through is important to the confidence of the sound, the group knowing that they did in fact enter where you cued them. In our next lesson, we are going to apply many of these principles to tackle the tricky subject of fermatas, where the beat pattern is interrupted by a sustain or a pause. How do we do this without adding beats in our pattern or being unclear in any other way? Well, I hope you will join me then.